to present our esteemed speaker today, Ms. Debby Shore, and she has an organization called the Sasha Bruce Network. Debby is well known and has been well known in our community. I know Debby from years ago when my organization was very active, and that's how Debby and I got to meet each other. And Debby does work with around, I think, about 5,000 families every year. And I always knew that if we needed a place that we needed to send a child, family, and they needed help to support, just get on the phone and call Debby. One thing I found, and you guys can read her bio, she's very modest. So she has a very short bio, but a long list of accomplishments. But Debby, one of the things that I noticed that we had in common on your bio is that you were a champion for change. And that year, the Rotary Club, the National Rotary Club, selected me as one of 8 Rotarians to be sent to the White House for champion of change as well. So we have that in common, okay? But anyway, I'd rather give all the time to Debby, and she's going to have a lot of information. So Debby, thank you very much, and we're honored to have you.
I am so grateful to be here speaking at the first meeting after the installation of your new amazing president, Lisa Cohen. She has, as I do, a deep and abiding commitment to the protection, shelter, and care for young people in vulnerable circumstances. Thus, her frame for her year of leadership is the year of Rotary's championship fight for youth. Isn't that fitting and beautiful? Guided by her own lived experience, she knows the incredible importance of champions for children who have little power or voice. And her amazing journey to become the champion of the world in women's boxing helps her to know that real change in this world requires fighting for it. Her capacity for love and for fighting the good fight make her a great leader in this year. And we stand at Sasha Bruce with the Rotary and with her. Her capacity for love and for fighting the good fight makes her a great leader. I think I said that. And to do so with the remarkable creative potential of the DC Rotary Club, being the champions for this vision, is worthy of celebration today. I have known of DC Rotary for many years, and you all have done wonderful things over the years for many, many groups of people. But I hope and believe that this year will be one of its bests. Maybe that is because I believe that there is nothing more important than protecting children and youth's childhood. Lisa and I have known each other a relatively short period of time, but we have connected deeply as I have devoted my life to fighting for children who would otherwise be unprotected and who come from communities that are under-resourced. So I really appreciate being the inaugural speaker today. I began my work just a few blocks from here in the early 70s. DuPont Circle was the center of the world at that time for young people. As a volunteer while I was in college, and while there were millions of young people leaving home and coming to cities across the country, it was a social phenomenon. Some young people left their families because of conflicts with their parents about values, the Vietnam War, or on a lark, but sometimes because of more serious abuse. Washington had one of the earliest shelters in the country, and I loved and still love being an ally and helper at such a dynamic time in a young person's life. I learned to believe that young people yearn for health and balance and will positively transform their own lives given the chance. I also learned that families were often struggling themselves and were more often than not willing to change and strengthen relationships. There were many teachers who came in those early days, and I am grateful that I got to be a part of the development of a strength-based approach, which we now call positive youth development, and marrying that with the then emerging family strengthening approach. These strategies and thinking continue to form the basis of our philosophy of care. And the commitment that our philosophy requires are why I believe we are as successful as we are with young people. Also, it is really important that we hire people who really care about, I should say, love the young people that we serve. It takes a lot to change the trajectory of the lives of young people, but we stand with them in this fight. So to tell you a little bit more about the development of Sasha Bruce, the organization that I joined in the early 70s collapsed. And in 1974, it left a huge gap for young people. So I initiated a drop-in center at Christ Church, Georgetown to fill that gap. We provided counseling, food, clothing, and referrals. There were young people living in all kinds of abandoned buildings all over the city, and we went out every day to find them. It became clear that a shelter was sorely needed after a few years. And it was at that time that I was introduced to the Bruce family. Ambassador David Bruce was ambassador to many countries, including Great Britain, and opened the legation in China. And they wanted to help quietly an organization that would be a living memoriam to their daughter who had died an untimely death. They allowed us to get a building, which became Sasha Bruce House. At that time, it was a critical decision that I felt needed to be made about where it should be located. It was really important, to my mind, to make services available not only to young people who were coming from long distances, which there were many, but we needed to be available to those places in the city where young people were coming from families where structural poverty meant opportunities were limited, and social services often included only extreme interventions. Thus, our Sasha Bruce House was opened on Maryland Avenue Northeast. Our organization has grown into 21 programs, 11 residential programs, and 10 community programs. What we quickly learned was that not everyone could go back home, even with all of our intent, where they could be safe. So we began to develop long-term programs for those young people who needed them, both singles and those with young children. And unfortunately, the need for sheltering and having spaces for young people to grow up has not abated. So we now have an array of homes for young people with different lengths of services depending on their needs and ages. And our programs now serve young people from 12 to 24. We have also included 2 programs in Prince George's County, where there are many of the young people from DC. There is a quite porous border between them, and they often live in both places. We have also developed an array of programs aimed at working in communities and schools to help prevent family dissolution, youth dropping out of school, and working with young people who are embroiled in the juvenile justice system. Our programs see, as Kenny mentioned, thousands of young people a year. I also want to say that it was not recently that we learned and took in the myriad structural reasons that there is so much inequity in our world. We have been working with that reality for many, many years and work on not buying into old tropes and ideas that minimize our young people, their families, or their communities. One of the great things that happened recently was what we had a 49th year gala. And we had a young woman who now has her own international consulting firm who had come to us as a 12 or 13-year-old many years ago because of the considerable abuse that she had at home that actually muted her. She was unable to speak when she came. A young man who was a former client and is now head of training at the Carpenters Union. And one of our board members who was a client 20 plus years ago, then went on to college and various jobs and then worked on the Hill, and a number of years became head of the appropriations committee for HUD and aided money to be put into the budget to specifically focus on youth homelessness. So I feel like there is a way in which there has been a coming full circle. Many young people don't have all of those great accolades, but I believe that what we have done was make sure that young people are having an opportunity to change the trajectory of their lives, take care of their children, and become contributing members of our society, which is what we all would want. So the other way that we have of supporting young people creatively is that we developed a youth advisory committee, which is a group that helps us these are young people with lived experience and have been in our programs. They help us assess how well we're doing in our programs, and they also are ambassadors and advocates. They have advocated at the city council. They've actually had an impact of getting $1 million more last year for youth homelessness. It was pretty incredible. They're developing a podcast, and we've had numerous politicians and other leaders who have come to speak to them who want to hear from young people directly. Our youth advisory board is called the CURB, meaning creative, urban, resilient, brilliant. But I don't really need to speak to you about this directly because we have one of our CURB members here. And so I would like to introduce to you Natalie Flo White, who is both a member of the CURB and one of our great leaders, and also is a member of our staff. Flo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Debbie, for introducing me. But again, my name is Flo. I am a former client of Sasha Bruce, and I am now a staff member of Sasha Bruce and also on their youth advisory board known as the CURB. So my journey with Sasha Bruce started. I left home at 17 due to mental health issues within the family and just, financial instability. I was able to secure my own apartment. I was working a job at Busboys and Poets. I thought I had the world figured out. But unfortunately, I had lost my job, unforeseen circumstances, and I lost my apartment. So that led me to looking up resources, and I came across Sasha Bruce. So after losing my apartment, I stumbled across Sasha Bruce's drop-in center in Capitol Hill. And it was just my saving grace, honestly. I went in, they gave me a place to stay. I was offered services, wraparound services that included mental health services. I was able to get shelter and food and clothes when I needed them. And ultimately, it just gave me a safe place to come and debrief. Because, when you're dealing with homelessness, you're all over the place. Your things are one place, your mind is another place. So it gave me a place to just come and be. The staff is always friendly and very intentional. I feel like Sasha Bruce does an amazing job of picking people who are intentional about seeing youth through and really wanting the best for them. So that's been my journey. Since being a client, I have been able to keep working towards my degree. I've been able to secure another apartment. I just gave birth to my daughter in December. So she's doing well. I'm just moving my way through. And it's just been awesome having a support system that I can always fall back on. And that has been just so influential in my life. And as far as the CURB, so their youth advisory board, has been such an awesome opportunity. It has put not only myself, but my other colleagues within the CURB in spaces that we could have never dreamed of. Even being here and being able to speak with you guys today has just been a dream to be able to be a community advocate and talk to people who want to hear about what we've been through and also talk to other youth who are going through the same things that we've been through. We're working on our podcast right now. We are creating a podcast to reach other youth who may be experiencing homelessness and be able to interview other community leaders and get their perspective on things that are going on. So that's coming soon. We'll be on all platforms, and I'll make sure to spread the news and share with you guys. But yes, that's been my experience. If you guys have any questions, feel free.
I thank you so much for being here today. My question, it's kind of a city shop question, but related to where we're both from. I think the latest statistics in the counties we're in or we lived in was about a third of children who were born to a parent that was on public health assistance were addicted to drugs. And that led to delays in development, and it just trickled all the way through school. And I'm curious from your experience in the city, are there opportunities we have to reach out to states that are experiencing similar challenges to the city and help influence the policies there that could lead to better childhood development outcomes for the kids that haven't had the same chance?
Did you say that you were from Beckley, West Virginia? So I am very involved in a national organization that has every single state represented, that really does try to bring forth policies that will cover all of the kinds of issues. And, there are some differences in states in terms of drug abuse, for instance, who's using drugs, et cetera. But I would say that, to my mind, unfortunately, a lot of the states where there is less capacity within the social services system really suffer. And people who are particularly kind of don't fit into a particular category, a lot of young people, for instance, didn't get into the foster care system, which is, when they were younger, and then they become teenagers and they don't want to be. And there really isn't as much, support as there should be for those people that are in between, that are falling through the cracks. So, I would say that this is a kind of battle that it might be something that the Rotary would want to get involved in, to kind of look at what are the policies that would be helpful regionally, nationally, that would urge some of the places that have less resources and probably different ways of thinking about how to support families. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question to ask you. I'll end with a statement. First of all, there is an epidemic taking place in Washington, D.C. right now, right? And the great work you're doing. But one of the things that we're doing, like with the Penn Chili Bowl, we're having organizations from all across the city meet and feel how we can collaborate together. So, and I'm going to invite you too, of course, for your organization. But do you agree first that there is an epidemic taking place in this city? Number one, that needs to be addressed. And number two, what's happening right now is that, and I'm going to try to say this, try to be politically correct, but we went to, when my son was worded 21 years ago, police were the answer. And you and I both know that's not true. And now we're coming back full circle. Well, that seems to be the policy of the city again. And I just want to see how you would address it.
Well, the first part of your question was about, do I think that there's an epidemic? There's no question. I think the way that I look at what's going on in the city is that between the pandemic and what has happened with the racial reckoning, I believe that young people are absolutely enraged, inflamed, and part of this, I think, is grief. I think there's this ambiguous grief, something that seems to, really be something that makes sense to me. There's just so much going on. It's almost like young people can't handle it. Yeah. In many ways, many of us had a hard time handling it. So yes, I think there is an epidemic of young people acting out. And, if that's what you're talking about, the epidemic of violence and carjackings. And yes, I think that that's really true. I believe that there needs to be a great deal more problem solving, getting into communities that are where the problems are, to work with families and work with young people. And I think that there are efforts in that direction. I think that there could be many more. In particular, I would say that I talked a little bit about our philosophy about family supports. And it has been much harder in the past number of years to get support for doing family work than for doing youth work. And youth work is very important. But if we are going to save communities, we have to also consider if you can get to families at an early enough time to really help them to manage better, we would be doing such a great service to young people. So, I guess what I would say is I think that there are solutions that need some enormous investment. And unfortunately, there's a lot of responses. And I understand people want to feel secure, and people in communities where a lot of the violence is going on want to feel secure, and they're calling for police too. But it isn't the solution to this more, to what's bubbling up. And we have to get to that place where we're, really working on a community level, on a deep level, because that's where the problems arise. Yes.
How are you? Thank you for being here. One of the things that we're seeing, and this is worldwide because our Emerald Planet TV, we cover all 214 countries and territories, and we're seeing this trend across the world. But many of the youth are under-resourced through themselves and their families, and also they don't know a way out. And so they're looking for a way out. And one of those ways, and there's many, but going down into the high schools at that age level is to help them to set up their own business and become certified in real skills that have real money, and they can still be in high school. And we're talking to the Richard Wright Public Charter School and the Columbia Heights Multicultural School and others about this. So it's in coding, it's in cybersecurity. There's 90,000 jobs just in DC for cybersecurity, nobody to go into it. They're not being educated, they're not being certified because people want to go off to college. And the whole thing is they can get a certificate, be making real money because these starting jobs are $45,000 to $60,000 just to start. And then it goes up to 100,000 very quickly if you get your next 3 certifications. So that's a long prelude. But how can everyone work together to have this focus to allow them to have their own business? It's called non-employer businesses. This is the largest category of income, and it's greater than all of the governments put together and even private businesses. They have no employees, but the average earnings in these families, and many of these are families, is $135,000 to $180,000 a year. They're not counted by the commerce or any of the statistical data. People don't know they're there. They're making good money. They provide real services, but this is something that can go down to the age people that you have. So how do we do that? And this goes to the question here, about Beckley, is how do we join together with Rotary, Kenny, what Kenny's doing, and Donnie and others to get down into these levels. So then they can have something they're really doing. They learn how to work. They're getting skills, but they're making money.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that over in your good hands. Thank you.
I can sign on to that. I think those are wonderful ideas, and there are ways to do that. I think that, the reality is that there are a lot of young people who are so convinced that this is not something that they can do, that they don't try. And that's where we need to get to.
That's the whole thing. As a society.
Yeah.
Sharing with.
Well, but more and more young people do know
Yeah.
that, that there are coding jobs, that there are jobs that are available, but these highly technical jobs, often people don't feel as certain that they are able. And that's where youth services need to come in. They need to help bolster their capacity. One of the things that Sasha Bruce in particular is trying to do in this next couple of years is develop a training program internal to our organization for young people with lived experience and to become youth workers. They are some of the best youth workers we have because they have an understanding of what's going on in the community. They have an understanding of other young people. We have trouble hiring them because they often need advanced degrees, and we're licensed in many cases. And so we would really love to open up opportunities to have a pathway for young people who aren't necessarily going to go to college for a whole variety of reasons, and to be able to develop a career path.
What can our Rotary Club do to enhance your good work?
I can't hear anything.
Say what can our Rotary Club do to enhance your good work?
Enhance our work.
Yeah.
Many things. There are many things. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. We have lots of special projects that we're often doing. And I think that would be a wonderful next step, which, Lisa will be leading towards what is it that we could be doing more of together with us, potentially with other organizations too. Sasha Bruce is very unique. I think it's a very effective organization. And we would be delighted to have all of your help. I'm sure that many of you have capacities in various areas that you could offer, but relative to young people, what we need to do is to come together and, make some investments of our time and our thinking and our heart into some of these very serious problems. There is a crisis.
Hey, thanks for being here. So I have a sort of ill-formed question about the evolving suburbanization of poverty. And so in particular, there's a lot of social services that are more dense in cities, but the urban tax bases are threatened and possibly will, continue to crumble. There aren't as many companies. The mayor was saying the federal government ought to bring back its workers. It's going to be a difficult time for cities, and a lot of the tax base that supports social services based in cities. So how do you expect that to evolve over the next couple of years?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really hard time in the next couple of years for our organization and for many. We've already gotten numerous messages about how much less we're going to get for doing the same work. So part of it is to find other partners, because what we don't want to do is to, lessen our services. I mean, one of the things that's happened during the pandemic is that there's been a great increase in the number of homeless people that there are, and families that are having a really hard time, people who lost their jobs and were in low-paying jobs anyway. So we really don't want to reduce service. So we're going to need to find more partners. And we've been, really trying to do that, to find corporations and foundations and individuals who recognize and see that this is a difficult time. The city has, announced that they have so much less funding this year, and that it's going to go on for a couple of years. So you're very knowledgeable of this. And, I think that we are doing our best to look ahead. I mean, that's the one thing that we can do as a larger organization, is to kind of be careful always with the resources that we have, so that we can make sure that we don't have any troubles coming up. But we really don't want to cut back. So.
Thank you for all that you do and for sharing it with us. In the environment in which I grew up in rural Iowa 70 years ago, it would have been said, she's doing the work of the Lord. So I'm wondering what your personal motivations were for going into this work, and whether you could make a living at it, and more broadly, how your organization is financed.
Well, my personal story is that I came from a family of people who were devoted to service and to social justice. And I grew up with lullabies of justice issues, coal mining and et cetera. And I think that coming into the world as an adult when I did, really was a perfect match for me, because this was during a period of time when there were a lot of young people who were interested in service. Vista opened, and what is it called? This AmeriCorps and all.
Peace Corps.
But I have just found that it is just such a compelling thing to be involved in this way, being able to initiate programs, being able to learn what works and what doesn't, and we're constantly trying to work at that. It has been just a great blessing for me. So I don't know that I would say it in quite the same way, but there's something there that it feels to me like this was where I was supposed to be. Yeah, and I sometimes, it's 49 years that the organization has been in existence. So it's been a long, wonderful time, ups and downs in every which way. So we are funded 80% through government grants. And government is so wonderful when they will provide a substantial amount of funding to do something. But typically, as time has gone on, what is true also is that what you're doing is exactly what the government thinks is what needs doing. And that often has been very limiting. At the beginning of our organization, we were funded completely by people, by individuals, donors. So we were able to be completely innovative. And I believe actually that the nonprofit sector is where the greatest innovation comes when it comes to social services. So we have really been working over the past number of years to develop a great deal more relationships with foundations and corporations and with individuals, because we after all have a substantial number of individuals in our world who have gained a huge amount of resources, and they're giving out that funding in a different kind of way. So we're always working at that. We hope that the mix is going to move towards the innovative end as time goes on.
It's our tradition here at Rotary, our club. We give each of our speakers a tree. So you all will have a tree for the Capitol. There will be a tree planted in your honor, and it'll actually have a GPS coordinates on it. I think it's on the letter or whatever. So you'll be able to locate your tree. And thank you so much. I am so honored to have you here because I know all the work that you've done, and I'm pretty sure we crossed paths when I was a little girl. So I remember you. And so I just want to thank you so much for agreeing. And I just want you guys to know I will be working with Sasha Bruce and keep this going. So thank you very much.